To one of the interviews that we've got for you here today. This was interesting. I did not realize this, I guess I should have, but the Nobel Peace Prize has never been given to a city, right? It's usually an organization or a person. Could Minneapolis, though, be the first? Well, news outlet The Nation has indeed nominated Minneapolis and its residents. This happened last Friday. It was a letter to the Norwegian Nobel Committee. The Nation, the publication, is the oldest continuously published weekly magazine in the country. It is widely recognized as a more progressive publication. Joining me now is John Nichols, the Nation's executive director. Thanks for joining us.
It's an honor to be with you, and I'm delighted to hear that Duluth's curlers are doing well.
They are, yes, and our director Leo, master curler, fantastic. So we're big curling fans here. So tell me why Minneapolis and its residents.
Sure. I think the whole world's been watching Minneapolis for the last number of weeks, and it's been very tough. Look, things that have happened in Minneapolis have been jarring, I think even horrifying to a lot of folks. But the response of the people of Minneapolis, their mass demonstrations in 20 below zero weather, their meeting of great challenges with singing and with peaceful demonstrations, things of that nature, I think has in many ways exemplified what the Nobel Committee over the last 100 and some years has said it's looking for when it seeks some place to put the award, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Now, as you note, they've always honored individuals and sometimes organizations, but there's no reason they can't honor a city. And to our view at The Nation, Minneapolis meets the standard.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned, so I was reading a little bit. I didn't realize just how political the Nobel Peace Prize is or perceived or is. And when you mentioned maybe this could be the year, tell me a little bit about what goes into, why do you think that this is the year for maybe something a little bit different in this space?
Well, the Nobel Prize evolves, and that's one of the most interesting things about it. When we were submitting the application, when we were doing the nomination, we had a lot of communication with the Nobel Committee, and we looked at a lot of their history, how they've done things, and it's very clear that over time they've sought to expand where they give awards and how they give awards and with the purpose with which they give it. And so it seemed to us that it's totally appropriate to give it to a municipality, a city. In fact, you might be able to give it to the whole state of Minnesota. But the bottom line is that the Nobel usually seeks to send a message. The Peace Prize is given with a purpose of saying, look, we think something important has happened here. We may not always agree with every aspect of it, but we think it's meaningful and we think the world should be paying attention. And I think to the view of those of us who edit The Nation, Minneapolis has sent a signal to the world about how to do a peaceful resistance to something that I think it's fair to say the overwhelming majority of people oppose, and to do so in a way that's creative, that's bold. It isn't always perfect, and there's plenty of reasons that people could criticize some aspect of it or another. But the fact is, if you look back on the history of Nobel winners, you can find plenty to criticize about many of them. At the end of the day, the purpose is to send that message. And I think that we think at The Nation that giving the award to Minneapolis would in fact send a very powerful message, not just in the United States, but around the world.
Have you spoken with Mayor Frey or anyone else here in Minnesota about it? What are those conversations?
I've been in Minneapolis and spoken to a number of folks. Interestingly enough, what's fascinating to me is I've been in situations in coffee shops and places like that where people not knowing I was from The Nation said, "Did you know that Minneapolis has been nominated for the Nobel Prize?"
Oh.
And so it's interesting that it's sort of spread, the word has spread. It's also been reported in newspapers in Norway and in Ireland and places around the world. So there is a lot of interest in this. In Minneapolis, I was talking the other night to Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General. And of course, he has a tremendous amount of Minnesota pride. And so I think I won't put words in his mouth. I think that he's one of many people who see this notion as an interesting one. I've also done conversations with a lot of folks, some interviews, where it's been striking that in the process, what happens is that people start to think about it initially, and they think, no, really, I don't know, are we that? And then as people kind of relax into the conversation, they tend to say, yeah, it wouldn't be that bad an idea.
John, that is
interesting.
Minnesota in a nutshell. Who, us? What? No, that's definitely Minnesota thing. I'm surprised people are relaxing into it so quickly. Usually it takes us a lot longer. I'm curious. So you said you spent some time here on the ground, even just recently. Did you also kind of pick up though on, and you mentioned this a little bit earlier, with not everybody's going to be for everything, but some people will look at this as an endorsement of what they believe the Democrats have done here, which they say they believe has caused a lot of this. And so how do you kind of get through that, or do you kind of lean into the progressive side of this?
Well, look, The Nation is a progressive magazine, so it's important to acknowledge that up front. So what impresses us may not impress everybody else. But at some fundamental level, if you look at Nobel Prizes throughout history, it's rarely given to somebody who everybody likes or who everybody agrees with. It's often given to someone who has provoked debate, who has opened up a dialogue, opened up a discourse. For many years, our civil rights correspondent at The Nation was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He won the Nobel Peace Prize while he was on our masthead as a contributor to The Nation. And while today I think there's almost universal reverence for Dr. King, in his time when he was active, he had many critics, but that wasn't an argument for not giving him the prize. In fact, maybe I would argue it was more of an argument for giving him the prize. And so the fact that something's controversial doesn't necessarily disqualify it.
Okay, finally, it's my understanding that, and I could be wrong here, but there's a chance that President Trump could be put forward for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize as well, because of the timing of him brokering the peace deal to end the war in Gaza. What do you think about that? Did you guys think about that ahead of time? Was that part of the decision making, or?
I don't think anyone is unaware of the fact that President Trump would like to get a Nobel Prize. And I think it's fair to say that at The Nation, it was our sense that Minneapolis was particularly deserving of the prize. The president will have his advocates. We're going to be advocating for Minneapolis.
Appreciate your time very much, John Nichols from The Nation. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
It's an honor to be with you, and I certainly hope that the curlers really go all the way.
We're glad to have your support. Thank you for that.
Totally.
Really appreciate it. All right, take care.